Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Morrison Nguyen with us. I always have trouble pronouncing that last name. Maybe Morrison will help me after that. But he's founder and scientist, tech humanitarian at Predicate, which is a cool startup, by the way. Creative open DX platform, world's first AI clinical decision support platform powered by sensors and speech. So podbuyer.com is presenting that podcast. That is my podcasting agency. If you'd like to start a podcast, monetize it through AdSense, through sponsors, and through lead gen, you can go to podbuyer.com. We have a free Kindle ebook for you and a masterclass if you want to accelerate your podcast learning and starting. Marcin, more, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and how to pronounce your last name.
Thanks, Charles. First of all, it's easier than it looks. It's pronounced "when,"
When?
and don't let anybody else tell you differently.
Well,
Actually,
in
I've been
French, it's
challenged.
different. That's the thing. It's like ingun or something like that. So
Yeah,
that's why my brain got confused. But when is easy.
"when" is easy. Yeah, it's just the way like it looks.
Yeah.
But no, thank you. I appreciate you having me here. So you just kind of want to know a little bit about my background.
Yes. I saw
Yeah,
MD. I saw founder. I love MDs, by the way, XMDs that transited to the founder world. I think it's quite fascinating. So if you could give us a brief overlook of who you are and why you started your business, Predicate, it'd be great.
yeah, yeah. No, thanks. So you're absolutely right. It is a kind of an interesting journey transitioning from a practicing physician to a founder. It kind of and everywhere in between that, it was. I went from being a physician to being working with industry, so like medical device companies, some big Fortune 500 companies, just kind of gaining that perspective. And then after kind of working for the big companies, started working for the smaller startup device companies, but still somebody else's startup company. And towards kind of the end of that time, I created Predicate back in September 2018 as a consultancy. Simply, we were an elite group of consultants that travel the world to consult with different healthcare systems and find out what's broken and offer suggestions to help fix those problems. Um, and in March of last year, we did a pivot. We went from Predicate Healthcare Performance Group, which is the consultancy, to what is today Predicate AI Labs. We're a fully focused tech firm. And as you mentioned in the description, we are focused on our flagship product, which is called OpenDX. It's the world's first platform that combines generative AI, wearable sensors, and natural language processing to predict for the onset of really serious conditions. Right now, we're focused on predicting the onset of sepsis, which happens to be the world's deadliest condition.
And why sepsis precisely? Is it just the time? I didn't know it was the deadliest condition as well. That's quite surprising to me.
Yeah, it's responsible for 1 in 5 deaths globally.
Whoa.
It's 49 million people every single year around the world. WHO considers that an underestimation. The reality is much higher than that. So north of 50 million people have sepsis, and it counts for 1 in 5 global deaths. The reason why it's such a challenging condition and why it's so deadly is because sepsis in the early stages, it mimics the symptoms of less severe and more common conditions. So imagine we've all had fevers, we've all had
Yep.
coughs, we've all had fast heart rates and shallow breathing, headaches, confusion. What if that was related to sepsis and we didn't know? That's why it's considered a silent killer because it masks itself as those symptoms or through those behind those symptoms. And with sepsis, every hour that you delay treatment increases your odds of death by about 8% per hour. So it's critical that you get diagnosed quickly and the treatment starts as soon as possible. And that's where we're really harnessing the power of AI to allow us to do that. We analyze using a multimodal approach using sensors and what the patient reports as symptoms. We contextualize everything through our analysis, and we were able to predict if sepsis is if that person is at risk for sepsis.
And for those that don't know what sepsis is, it's like the infection of a bodily member, I would say, like a bacterial
Yeah.
infection, most of the time in the skin.
Yeah, you're right. It starts with an infection. It wouldn't be sepsis unless it starts with some kind of infectious source. So it could be bacterial, it could be viral, it could be fungal. In certain parts of the world, it could be protozoan. So but it starts with some kind of infection. Now, normally, your body's immune system would locally just approach or try to uh, fight that infection locally. But with sepsis, it's systemic. Tissues begin to be starved of oxygen,
Hmm.
and end organs begin to shut down, and you can go rapidly progress from that fever to death.
Right. Yeah, it's like a chain reaction, right? So the death of tissues releases more shit in the system and the bacteria spread even faster. Like, what's the chain reaction here?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a cascade. It's a cascade of exactly right. It's an inflammatory cascade. Um, certain elements are released, and it just makes it worse and worse and worse. So that's why there are certain evidence-based bundles that recommend as soon as you diagnose sepsis, and you know that person has sepsis, you immediately begin things like a broad spectrum antibiotic, fluids and lactate, all these different things you have to do as part of a treatment bundle. And the longer you wait, the more severe the damage. And that's the thing about sepsis is those if you are fortunate to survive sepsis, then the condition after this sepsis survival syndrome you're not really the same anymore. It's just this is why it's so key to identify it early.
How are you not the same? Is it the energy? Is it the cognitive functions? What is that syndrome?
Yeah, all of the above. We've heard of like long COVID, right? It's kind of the
Yeah.
mental fog. With sepsis, is it's not that different. There's because there what's called mental status changes is one of the hallmarks of sepsis detection. So, kind of having that mental fog, and also remember that because tissue is being starved of perfusion, starved of oxygen, and the organs, the vital organs are shutting down. Once you have that trauma to the organs, it's kind of hard to reverse that course. Once the damage is done, it's done. People may have, it may affect longevity. It may affect if you have comorbid conditions, it may make those worse.
Right. And tell us more about the septic shock. Is that a reaction of your immune system going haywire? What is it exactly?
Yeah, sepsis itself is the condition where your immune system goes into overdrive. Septic shock is a phase of sepsis where it's kind of like the most severe phase. So you
Okay.
go through this kind of basic, simple sepsis. You display some symptoms. You're feeling really sick, maybe sicker than you've ever felt before. And then if left untreated, it can progress to septic shock, which usually at that point, now you're hypotensive, and you're fighting for your life in the ICU.
Okay. And I'm just curious why the body did it evolve to defend itself against that? And why is it like one fifth of the causes of death? Is it because we're packing people in hospitals that are quite infested with many viruses? Like, why isn't the body designed to cure that on its own?
Yeah, so that part science is we're still trying to figure out why that is. And there's been some studies that kind of link it to certain markers within the immune system that could that kind of get triggered. We really don't understand why just yet. We're getting closer, but we really don't understand kind of why that's kind of mediated. Now, as far as what perpetuates it or what exacerbates that in certain conditions, you take that 49 million sepsis incidents around the world, 85% of that number is in the global south, where these are low to middle income countries that have lack of access to potentially clean water, clean food, healthcare access. So if they have an infection from the community and the environment, not necessarily the hospital, although that is a problem because 1 in 3 patients who die in hospitals typically die of sepsis. But if they get acquired from the community acquired sepsis, then they don't have the healthcare providers that are trained to one recognize it, the symptoms, and to diagnose it properly. And then once it's diagnosed, how do you get the treatment? So there's all these different things that kind of cause it to make it more difficult to treat that.
Right. And Predicate itself, how are you making, for example, hospitals save money, and how are you improving the outcome of patients when catching sepsis?
Yeah, well, one of the first things we do is when a patient comes in to let's say to the emergency room, how do we know that patient who has a fever can is potentially septic? So one of the things we do is we use a wearable biosensor, and we start monitoring vital signs like heart rate, respiratory rate, heart rate variability, arrhythmia detection, SpO2, blood pressure, those kind of things. And what we're doing is we're getting a baseline for that patient to see the changes over a certain time. And then the next thing we do is when that patient is being interviewed in the triage exam, the usual questions that any healthcare provider would ask them: why are you here? Tell me about your symptoms. When did it start? Have you been around anybody who's sick? All of that, it provides additional context to what the wearable data is showing. So, for example, if say that they took a temperature, the patient has, I don't know, 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a low grade fever, and then which is does not tell anything really. So you have a low grade fever. It could be many things, but when during the interview, the AI picks up that the patient says, "Yeah, I had a fever actually 2 days ago. I tried taking some Tylenol for it. It really didn't resolve it. I feel worse today." So now the symptom timeline is shifted. That gives us more information about it, a more complete picture of that patient. By doing that, we can quickly analyze and create a more comprehensive patient profile for that patient. This is kind of the generative AI part. And then we the output for the model is a prediction of risk. We can tell the healthcare provider this patient has a high probability of risk by the scoring system. You should really look at this patient. And then by doing that, we prevent the ICU admission. That's where costs are high. It's driven by the patients they're too advanced in their pathology. They're too advanced in their condition that now they're in the ICU. We're talking, 10, 20, $30,000 worth of treatments that could be saved by just recognizing it earlier.
But isn't that profitable for hospitals?
Yeah, you can make that argument, right? So there is certain high margin services that hospitals bill for, and yeah, sure, it's a revenue stream. But even hospitals, another one they want to do is they measure things like length of stay. There's the pandemic really kind of showed us the cracks in how many few beds we really have when we really need it, like the ICU, for example. So there's a metric called bed utilization rate. So basically, butts in the bed, turn them over, next patient, next patient. That's how they generate revenue, right? New patients coming through. So you have a patient that's in there because they're so sick in the ICU for days and weeks. That's one less bed for a new patient to come in. So that's lost revenue as well.
But hospitals have a social aspect to them, right? So there's laws regulating that so that they're not a 100% profit machine, or am I wrong about that? In the
Yeah,
US talking.
yeah, the U.S. system, of course, there's checks and balances. We also know the U.S. system is very well. I'll say it, it's punitive system, right? It's a lot of stick and carrot, more stick than it seems in carrot. There are things, for example, so related to sepsis, there are things like quality benchmarks that they're measured and reimbursed based on the performance to these quality benchmarks to sepsis. If they have a high rate of sepsis mortality, if they have longer length of stay, if they have decreased compliance to sepsis treatment bundles, then the payers, including CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, will ask that question: why are you not performing above threshold? And they have to explain for that. So there's always scrutiny. and that kind of keeps hospitals in check to make sure that they're operating you know, at the optimal level.
Interesting. And you mentioned a part about hardware. So you're producing your own hardware. Why not use the existing hardware of hospitals and just go on the software side of things?
Yeah, we're actually the latter. We're not
Okay,
manufacturing the hardware.
cool.
And I don't ever want Predicate to get into the business of manufacturing hardware. It's just there's more complexity, more costs, uh, many kind of things to it. So OpenDX is created as a sensor agnostic platform. What we care about is the quality and the number of sensors in the ecosystem, in the clinical ecosystem that we can grab data from. To our algorithm, the more high quality data, the better. And we don't really, we can get it from the EMR, we can get it directly from the devices, but it's what's proprietary for us is our predictive model. And we're the first in the world to combine language models with wearable sensor data together as part of a generative AI uh, risk prediction.
Right. And how do you make sure that they have all the data possible on the client? Because ChatGPT is notorious for giving a quality of response as high as the quality of your question, right? So how do you make sure to get really all the data about the client before you make a diagnosis?
Yeah, and the key to that. So, what's really, really important with the design of the OpenDX model is that it's trained on a very diverse patient cohort. We have trial commitments right now across 5 continents. One, because sepsis is very multifaceted, and the proper way to train an AI model, especially in healthcare, is to be able to train it with data coming from all over, all different patients, all different cultures, all different geographies, and at all different settings. So the allows us to be more trustworthy, and also uh, AI, as I define it, is augmented intelligence more so than artificial intelligence, meaning that we will always provide a data lineage, full transparency. You want to know how we got to our prediction? Here it is. Here's all the data contributing to that prediction. Second thing is that there needs to be a human in the loop. I believe that human doctors, clinicians should always be involved in the interpretation and especially the implementation of an AI output. AI is nowhere near yet ready just to be self, especially with healthcare. There has to be a human.
Right. I think the number of the percentage of the responsibility of the AI will only go up with time, eventually even reaching 100%. I think it'll get that good with Moore's law and what we've seen the last couple of years. What do you charge these hospitals for your solution? And is it better than a fancy chat GPT, like a prompt and data? Like what is your moat in this market?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned ChatGPT because there are different language models that we can choose from. Right? There's good ones. And then there's better ones. And it depends on what kind of the LLM that you're using and why you're using it. But I can say that there was a study that was just done, and it was in JAMA this year, so we're still in 2024. And New York Times recently did an article on it, and it took uh, patient cases, and they gave it to a group of doctors, human doctors, and say, all right, what is the diagnosis for this case, this patient? Um, Without any kind of AI tools at all, I believe it's like 74% of doctors got it right. And then they say, all right, now you can use some AI tools in there. There's a little bit better than not much, but a little bit better than the no AI tools group. And then they say, you know what, no humans at all. I'm just going to put this copy and paste into ChatGPT, see what ChatGPT diagnoses it. The ChatGPT by itself did better than the human groups together. So what does that mean? Yeah, it kind of contradicts what I just said earlier. There's always human has to be in the loop, but it's we're talking about isolated cases here. Sepsis is very complex. I don't think a model is ready yet. It requires that there has to be humans adjudicating and kind of checking the math and checking the work of the AI model. But you'd ask about kind of our business model. We're right now pre-revenue, but the proposed business model or pricing model is basically on it's a tiering system based on the volume or the number of sepsis encounters that hospital had in the previous 2 years, and then we put you in a kind of a tier, and then it's a single licensing fee you pay, and then you get access to the OpenDX app.
Got it. On the research side of things, is there a lot of researchers in the area of sepsis? Leading to my next question, like, would you think of advancing that area of research through AI yourself at some point? Because in my opinion, well, sepsis, that the papers must be few on a yearly basis, right? What if we could use AI to correlate some stuff and give more weight to some papers than some others?
Yeah, I do believe that AI will is it's very plastic. It's learning. It gets smarter with more data. It also gets smarter with the mistakes. For us, for example, with the human in the loop part, there's a chatbot feature that once the OpenDX makes its prediction, it asks the clinical end user, "Do you agree or disagree with this prediction, and why?" We learn from that. The AI model learns from that based on the human response, and it gets better and better and better. So, do I think that what Ray Kurzweil thinks there's a singularity event by the year 2035? Maybe. I don't know. It's scary to think about. Like in 2035, so which is like 10 years from now, we will be singular with humans and AI into one thing, one entity. I don't know. That's a possibility, but I do know that AI is being more pervasive, that it's being weaved throughout all different aspects of human life. And we're starting to see increasing adoption in like the healthcare vertical. And what's really going to really catalyze that change is that AI developers need to do what we're doing in building in those AI safety layers, being very transparent, demystify, strip away that black box, and show what if you have high confidence in your output, then show it. Create a system open source to it.
Yeah, I love that. As a tech humanitarian and a doctor, like, do you often ask yourself if you'd have more impact, like treating people directly via creating tech like you're doing right now?
Yeah, that was my big motivation to leave practice and go to tech entirely and dedicate, serve patients through technology primarily. And as consultants, we were taking emerging technologies into emerging markets. Something that's very core to Predicate's mission is to promote health equity. We were developing this first in world technology, but what good is it if we can't be able to make it accessible for every single human being on Earth? And that's really, really important. And core to Predicate's mission is how do we do that? Designing a scalable solution. So the way we do that is we don't, unlike other technologies out there that require information from the electronic health record, we could use it, but we don't require it. So it allows us to scale in that. You remember that 85% in the global South, we're in areas in rural health deserts all around the world, and they have access to some kind of internet cloud, so we can access our cloud to do our analysis. And even still, we're playing around with federated learning, so you don't have to have cloud access. Then you can get to. So social impact is a big part of what we're doing, and I think that's something that is a balanced view. With although we're a for-profit company, we still have substantial social impact.
Love that. So what's next for you in 2025?
Yeah, 25, we're going to officially launch our OpenDX to the world. We're to be in Latin America first. That's where most of our time is being spent right now on clinical trials, and then we'll be on the pathway to get full FDA clearance so we can launch be cleared to launch in the U.S. Following that. We're also exploring kind of conditions adjacent to sepsis. While we're looking for sepsis, we're also finding many other things. So we ask the question: is it possible to detect, certain ischemic heart disease or severe COPD, or go into the chronic disease management? Also, this explosion of hospital at home market, where hospitals, patient goes into the emergency room, instead of being admitted to a hospital bed, they're essentially admitted to their bed at home. Still a hospital patient, but now they're at home. And what's our ability to integrate into that setting? My goal, this is kind of like ideal world for me with OpenDX, is you had mentioned that use the existing devices. There's over 100 million people in the U.S. that have some kind of wearable device, and to be able to kind of weave OpenDX into Apple Watches and Samsung, Garmin, Fitbits, Whoop straps, Oura rings, you name it. Be able to use OpenDX, our algorithm, as part of a wellness tracking element, because a lot of people, it's the first step is they have to recognize that their basic everyday symptom. In fact, we have a hashtag called hashtag more than just a fever. They have to recognize that you got to do something, because that fever may not be just a fever, but how do you know? I don't mean to overreact to every single symptom, but if you had a technology, an AI-based technology can tell you, yeah, pay attention to this. Go to your doctor or go to the emergency room. You potentially have sepsis. That's the other situation. We can save so many more lives that way.
Well, thank you so much for being on today, Morrison. Where can people find out more about you?
Our website is predicatelabs.ai. And there you can find information. We have a contact form there as well. And we are currently fundraising. So we're looking for that strategic investor to help us maintain our first mover advantage. So if you're an interested investor, it's just the email is easy. Just morrison.nguyen, Nguyen, at predicatelabs.ai.
So I was Charles Cormier Morrison.